So, welcome back. This is part 2 of the intro. So, in the first intro, we talked about the overall project, garden size, sort of kind of how it's going to pan out for this sort of mini series of getting everything ready for the building side of stuff. So, this is now going to be the kind of the idea of the project. So, it's going to take a lot of time. Obviously, I'm doing most of this myself, but I really have kind of sold myself into the idea of doing this sort of build. I've not got any building experience in terms of, like, you know, structural or whatever, and I've seen a lot of people on YouTube doing it. This kind of stuff massively intrigues me. I love watching this kind of stuff. I was watching people building houses yesterday, and it just looks like such a fun idea, and it's such like an accomplished sort of idea. And I've always thought, if I had enough money, I'd probably always want to build my own house. But again, we're not at that stage where we have stupid money and we can do crazy ideas. We kind of have to be realistic. So, in terms of the project itself, as you can see, it's sort of, we're in the early stages of kind of getting all that stuff ready to be cleared out, flattened, rotivated. It's all tested, and that's obviously what we talked about in the first part. So in the second part, we're going to talk actual build itself. So the idea is to build a 20 foot by 23 foot shed. I haven't done it on a 3D module printer yet, which I am going to be doing over this weekend, just to kind of confirm what I already know, which I've done on paper, but I just want to have a 3D visual of it so I can also show it to you guys and girls. The idea is to build a 23 by 20 foot shed, whichever way you want to slice it. The garden's massive enough, it can cut it, like you say, the garden's about 80 or 90 foot. I can't exactly remember the exact, but it's still a big garden. Meter wise, it's probably about 17 meters or 18 meters. I'm off there, but from what I can remember off the top of my head without looking at the paperwork. So the kind of idea is to obviously build the shed. It's going to be a sort of a slightly sloped roof. That's basically the easiest way to describe it. I'm going to probably, so the idea is to have the foundations built. I'm going to be using, they are like plastic grids. I was going to go with paving slabs, but if I'm going to, realistically, I worked it out on, to do the space that I need, 20 foot by 23 foot, I need about 139 90 by 60 slabs, or 170 60 by 60, or something along the lines of that. It's not exactly an exact number, because obviously the original idea was to do 20 foot by 25 foot, and that's what, so that was by that, so it might be, the numbers might be a little bit less than that. But that's kind of what was the general idea, was to do it with that size. So obviously I've shortened it down a little bit, just purely to give myself a little bit of width on the sides, because there's a slight slope on either side, and I didn't want to go too far to the sides, just in case it ends up sagging and dipping and we get some sort of structural issues at the bottom. Obviously it might not happen, but that was generally the idea. So the idea was obviously going to be paving slabs, and I thought, well, I could do concrete or cement. It turns out that's massively expensive. It's probably about £1,500 to do a concrete base at the bottom, 6 inches thickness, and the 23 by 20 foot, whatever that works out squared. It turned out to be about 1,500 quid, and that was most companies I checked. They obviously bring a machine and they'll pump in the concrete. Obviously, then I'd also have to buy on top of that all the rebar. I'd virtually need to be buying all the stuff to basically get it in place with all the rebar and all that stuff for them to come and fill it, and it's just too expensive. Even if I wanted to do it myself, I'd probably need a mixer. Then I'd have to go and buy probably about 180 bags of cement, which is just a lot. Sounds like so much work. I'm not afraid of the work. I'm not afraid of that. It's just the time is an issue. Like, I just don't have that much time to be able to go and stick at that for that long on my own as well. No help. I mean, obviously I can probably rope in some friends and stuff, or pay some people to come in and do some work, but again, I'm just kind of looking for the most cost-effective solutions, shall I say. So then obviously the other idea is to tarmac it. Again, that's another expensive opportunity, but again, tarmac would have been pretty good because you can just thingy. I also looked at pea gravel or stone. Again, it's a good idea, but again, it's recommended that you don't do it for sheds. I mean, I've seen so many conflicting things. Some people say it's the best thing you could ever put under a shed. Some people saying don't do it. It'll end up making your shed bow. It's just like, you see so many conflicting reports and things, but then you've watched people build stuff on YouTube, and people just get on with it and they don't care. I mean, I suppose at the end of the day, if you come to issues, you've got to change it. And the majority of people ain't building something of this scale. So most people's sheds are probably 10 foot by 10 foot or 15 foot by 10 foot or something, which is still pretty big, but it's not 20 foot by 23 foot. I did look at buying one also. Look at buying like a shed base. Concrete, they do set concrete shed bases. Again, that's about 800 quid. So it's like, that's not a bad idea. I don't actually mind that as an idea, but again, it's something that you can buy for 800 quid. I could probably buy paving slabs for maybe half of that. I could also source it off eBay, Amazon, not Amazon, eBay, like eBay, Gumtree, all basically the places that people are giving stuff away for free, or whatever. I could go probably source it. It'd just take a lot more time and effort, but you could probably source most of that for a lot less. I'm not saying free, but a lot less. Okay, so that's like the sort of so kind of come to the idea of looking at plastic grids. Now you can fill them with sand and stone. Similar idea, just to give them that extra bit of weight, so when they bed in, the weight will sit down and they'll sit flat. I have looked at that idea and actually don't mind that idea. A lot of people are recommending to use it, that people I've spoke to, saying like it's actually probably a bit more of a cost-effective solution. It works out that if you where's my drink gone? Oh, there it is. Yeah, so basically it works out more of a cost-effective solution. So if you're looking to do a 20 foot by 25 foot, which I was originally going to be doing, I believe it's about 350 or 360 quid to get the equivalent amount, because they basically do it in sizes of like 10 by 10 or whatever like that. So you'd have to get obviously a 10 by 13 and a 10 by 10, and that will equate to 20 foot by 23 foot. And that works out about 370 quid. So then I'd also have to add a bag of a couple of bags of gravel or whatever I'm going to fill it with onto that. Maybe just and then maybe bond it with a little bit of something to keep it from moving. But it seems like the most cost-effective idea. It's probably going to cost me around about 500 quid, which actually it's not a bad price. Everything else is working out over 1,000. The only other kind of alternative is I am debating. You let me know in the comments, because obviously this project's not going to start for a while, so I have time. This is kind of the idea of getting this video out, so I can have a conversation, lay my ideas out, and then people in the comments can absolutely hammer me with ideas, because I'm looking for the most cost-effective solutions. Obviously, for a person that's never built anything at this sort of level before, I want to see if I can kind of test myself and see what skills I've got, if I can actually get this sort of pull it off. So yeah, in the comments, just let me know what you think is a cost-effective idea. What else could I look at? What other options? Because obviously we've got to get all the garden side of it done first before we jump into any sort of pre-build. So obviously that's the kind of the idea for the foundations. Obviously the other stuff is pretty straightforward. Standard walls, nothing too fancy. Probably going to have a window either side, a front window and 2 side windows, a door. Obviously the door is probably going to be like I'm more likely going to go for a double glazed triple lock door, something stupid like that with some security. So that's sort of like on the outside. And obviously we're doing like a like a half sloped roof, nothing too massive, just so the water doesn't stick on the top. Probably going to end up putting I can't remember the name of it, but I spoke to a friend of mine who has like some sort of waterproof felt on his roof, rubber felt. I think it might be something, a specific name, but that's what I might go with, just to give it a little bit more protection from elements and such and such. And then obviously the windows will probably just be double glazed. I'm probably going to source them off eBay, because I've seen people selling windows quite cheap. It obviously just be a case of having to build a frame out myself. Obviously not build a frame out for the windows to go into, and then obviously just sealing it with you know, the standard stuff that you need to seal it with, window sealer and all that kind of stuff. And then the idea from that is to have the roof is obviously just inside. We'll probably have rafters in it, because I like the idea of having rafters. The space in terms of up to, for me standing, I'm 6'2", so I'm fairly tall. The shed is probably going to be about 7'2", so it's a foot of space between me and the roof. I think that's fair space. I'd love to go a bit higher, but obviously permits and regulations, if I go any higher, I'm probably going to have to acquire a license or permit to build higher. And the only other thing I might end up doing is, because we're going to end up rotating that ground, I might dig down a foot to give myself an extra foot of height, if you get what I mean. So it makes more sense to go a foot down, clear all of that out. So it probably being about 8'2", and that will give me 2 foot of headspace. It doesn't necessarily matter to me too much, because everyone else is in my friendship groups is relatively smaller than me. So it's like people coming in ain't gonna have an issue. It's just more for me when I'm walking about. I don't want to be banging my head off stuff. Okay, so that's kind of like the structural sort of side of it. And then in part 3, which is obviously I'm trying to make these a little bit short, but it's almost impossible when you've got so much to talk about. So in the first part, obviously we've talked about the garden side of the renovations. Obviously bear in mind my t-shirt soaking wet, by the way, because I was in the garden doing wood and it was pissing it down. So and now it's obviously completely sunny, which is just British weather from a tea for a tea. So yeah, the first video is obviously talking about the garden side of stuff, how we plan to strip the garden, what we're going to do with the garden minus the shed. This is part of the structural side of it. The third part of it is going to be the interior of the shed, how I plan to do everything else. So in the next video, in this 3-part kind of introduction, you're going to hear me talk about how I want the shed to be. And obviously what we'll do when we've talked about the interior, I'll also go into how I'm going to 3D design it, and that won't be shown until we actually start the building, because I don't want to do any of that kind of stuff until we've actually started making the orders for like certain stuff to come in, because then obviously we're in that point where then we can start talking about it, because it isn't happening yet. So okay, so in the next one, that's what we're going to be talking about. So I hope you enjoyed this, me rambling, and you get to see my face. I don't really put my face too much on camera, which I'm not really. I'm a very introverted / extroverted person, so I have to get used to the idea of people seeing me a lot more. So, the beard's all over the place. I have no idea what's going on, and the hair's getting really grey. That's the stress of working a job and having kids. So don't judge me. Anyway, in the next one, we'll talk about that. So keep your eye out for the next one, and I'll catch you in that one. Peace. Don't forget to like and subscribe.